I'm gonna record on this computer. All right. Okay, good morning. Hello, good day, whatever time it is from where you're watching. My name is Sarah Clanton. I'm a singer-songwriter, cellist, and founder here at TUNEDOUGH. And today we have a very special situation. This webinar, this video here, we're going to talk about a skill that all artists need, and it is negotiation. We need to learn how to improve our communication skills to create a more sustainable career for ourselves because as independent artists, we are what I like to call musicpreneurs. And today, joining us, an expert on this subject, is Mr. Steve Krause. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Yes, awesome. I'm so excited to have you here today because I would love for you to tell everybody about yourself. But where we met at Rocky Mountain Song School in Lyons, Colorado,
Mhm.
is a great, is so great because you're kind of like me, where we've kind of got left and right brain situation. You're a songwriter, but you teach. You're kind of more in what they call the real world, which what even is that? But you have your hands in all of it, and so I think you offer a very unique perspective. But Steve, tell us everybody about yourself.
Thank you. Well, let's see. Okay, I'll tell quickly so that we have lots of time for questions and all the things we want to talk about. But I'm an attorney. I've been a lawyer now for almost 30 years. Negotiation is my bread and butter. I help technology companies negotiate their big commercial contracts. Most recently, like some examples, doing $250 million deals with the NBA, the NFL, Walt Disney, the English Premier League, and many, many, many other types of deals of this sort. Um, my background is in negotiation skill set, negotiation work, and commercial contracts. I'm also a performing songwriter, and that's how, of course, how we met. And I've been coming to the song school for many, many years, and really love the intersection actually between art and negotiation and law. And negotiation, to be clear, I don't think of as sort of a legal skill. I think of it as a life skill. And that's why I was excited when you asked me to come and to sit with you because this is the type of thing that I think the ability to have difficult conversations and to do it
Mm-hmm.
well and to not avoid them is such a useful life skill that it helps you, at least it helps me in all aspects of my life. And I think it can be of particular use to singer songwriters and folks who are trying to make a living in music.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. And just even new ideas are coming to mind when I hear you say all of this because it's interesting as artists we have like so much going on right inside of us and we're trying to get it out creatively. There's a lot of negotiation within ourselves, and then like these
Sure.
difficult conversations we may have with, say we're in a band and we need to talk about how much money we're going to split for the tour, or session musicians, how we're going to pay them, all of these things. These quote unquote difficult conversations, I think, mostly feel difficult because we may not just have the skill and instead of or the practice having these conversations. And so I think a lot of times artists will feel overwhelmed, they'll shut down, there's frustration, maybe they feel like they should know this stuff, or it can be very nerve-wracking. But when we have clarity and skill, we can just come to those conversations more confidently. So that's what I'm hoping people pay attention, or like who are tuning in today, get out of this, is that it's yeah, it's a confidence builder too.
Well, yeah, and not just that. I mean, people, I mean, I think there are four reactions to sort of avoiding. I think we're all conflict avoidant, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think
Yep.
very
Patty.
few of us like the concept of conflict, and we associate negotiation of any kind with conflict, right? I want this, you want that, or frankly, I'm not even sure what you want, right? But hey, I'm nervous because now we're going to have to fight this out. And it's that concept, that context of sort of operating from a place of scarcity
Mm.
that makes us do really funny things. We either get passive aggressive, right? We can do that. Like, oh, well, if that's what you want, okay. If you're willing to break up the band over this, fine. Sort of the sort of thing. Or people will get overly sort of submissive, right? And sort of like, well,
Mm.
okay, I guess it's just not worth bringing up. It's not worth the fight,
Mm.
right?
Oh, that's
Or
me.
people will
Mm.
get right. People will get overly aggressive, right? So I've decided on our set list. This is cool, right? right?
Mm.
Sort of thing. Or, I'm trying to think. There's at least one other. Oh, right. They just won't even say anything at all.
Oh,
They
yeah.
won't tell you the thing that is bothering them because it avoids the fight, right?
Right.
And all it does really is postpone the issue. And so it's reframing these negotiations because none of those things results in an efficient outcome, in the
Right.
most effective outcome. And if your goal is to get to the most effective outcome for you, then you need to be able to approach difficult conversations better.
Even
So,
you just bringing up the set list, like what a micro negotiation. You know, you might not. I had just like a few situations come to mind where I was sitting with like a band that I was doing some work with, and we were coming up with a joint set list. It wasn't exactly like in the round Nashville style, but like there was a lot of tension over the set list, and I had never actually experienced that because I play mostly by myself, or I like lead a band, and I am like, here's a set list. But it was really
right.
interesting because I had never it's like, why is there all this? But yeah, how to even negotiate that and to
Mm-hmm.
like gain the consciousness or the awareness that we are even maybe we are avoiding, you know. I mean, I you're speaking to me, so I hope whoever is listening is also like feeling spoken to because yeah, with set lists from getting a gig to probably even like at the gig you've already got at the end of the night a lot of times you might get some pushback and you're like, oh no, actually we negotiated this. How do you navigate all these things, and we'll talk about that. But I think really the what I'm gathering what right now that I and what I've gathered from like pondering this and reading getting to yes and prep and of this is negotiation is an empowering tool. It's not a conflict. It's not an F word, and so um yeah, I think we should talk about something that really stood out to me in the book, and we're getting at this right now is how do you separate people from the problem, yet how do you navigate like the fact that we are people, and
Right.
that we do have emotions, and how do we get to that most desired outcome that is best for everybody?
Sure. So I guess just to back up really quick. So you mentioned a
Yes.
book called Getting to Yes, which is a good sort of starter book for folks who want to get into this idea. It's a small little book. It was written back, gosh, it was written a long time ago. It was written back in the like 70s or 80s, and it's sold like a million copies worldwide, and it's translated into 18 languages. I think of it as a starter book
Yeah, it's got a
because
lot
I
of
think that it's
old
pretty
political
good
examples.
as a basis for
Yeah.
sort of where to begin. There's a lot of newer stuff that I really love. I'm actually here in Ithaca, New York this week. I'm teaching my negotiation class at Cornell Law School and using three other books that I think are really cool. And so if folks are curious about what books they can read about difficult conversations, they can reach out to you. You can put them in touch with me, and I would be happy to share that information because there's some
Definitely.
new stuff out there that is really, really good. But one of the things that Getting TS talks about is that one of the ways to be a better negotiator is technically to separate the people from the problem. It's to try to remove what they're saying, to try to remove the emotion from the issue. I frankly don't know that that's feasible. I mean,
Right?
like depending
I'm like,
on,
how do you do that?
I don't know that you can. I think all you can do is be aware of it,
That's a
right? But I
relief to hear
think
you say.
yeah, no. I think all you can do is sort of be aware that if you think that everybody, what is that old adage around poker, right? If you're sitting at a poker table and you don't know who the sucker is, it's probably you, right? And like if you're in the midst of a difficult conversation and you're thinking, I'm the only sane person here, you're probably wrong, right?
Mhm.
Or if I'm the only person here who's operating logically,
Mm,
you're just not listening well enough, right?
mhm.
And so, how do you do it? Acknowledge that negotiating is going to be part of your job, that this isn't something to be indignant about. As a singer songwriter who's trying to make a living at this, all these little conversations are part of the gig, right? The gig isn't just writing the song, performing the song. The
Right.
gig is making a living. And making a living involves all kinds of conversations. Some of them are easy, some of them are less so. Um, Try to just remember that everybody is emotional. And
Mhm.
that's actually a good thing because we can talk later about some of the best techniques to to have difficult conversations well is
Yes.
remembering that all of us are animals, that all of us are emotional animals
Hmm.
and that most of our decision making comes from that part of our brain, which is the part of our
Absolutely.
brain that we write from as songwriters, right? You don't write with that logical part of your brain. You write with the other piece, that piece that creates magic. That piece that creates magic is also the piece that gets scared easy, that gets offended easy,
Hmm.
that feels insulted easy, right? Just remember that it's not just you that feels that way. Everyone does. The skills of a good negotiator understands how to calm the animal mind in the person sitting across from them. And there are specific techniques that enable you to do that well. They are tried and tested. And we'll talk about those later. But so I think that's one way to sort of approach it. The other way is sort of a trick if you want to hack, right? Most people are great negotiating for others. They're terrible negotiating for themselves,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
Because ego gets involved. Things feel more present when it's for you, right? These types of things. So if you're having a challenge, if you're having trouble separating emotions from the process, or at least staying calm and collected, pretend that you are your agent and approach it that way. What would your agent do? Or if you were negotiating for a friend of yours, right? It might help you stay a little more objective, a little calmer in the process, because really things are not as scarce as you think they are.
That's so true. Scarcity is totally a story. And well, actually, I do know some artists that use a different email and a different name and do actually act as their own agents. And I have heard
Mhm.
of folks talking, and it's helpful because it does help them compartmentalize.
Yeah.
There's a really great book called Alter Ego about that. I mean, kind of even like talking about how Beyonce has, Sasha Fierce is her stage name. So that's the hat she puts on when she gets there. So yeah, put on your agent hat. And actually, kind of a side quest note, practicing that is going to help us be ready for when the booking agent comes, because
Mm-hmm.
you're going to know actually what you want them to be negotiating on your behalf, and
Yeah.
you're going to know if they're going to be doing it's going to like also you're going to gain a next level like superpower of discernment in building a future team. So
Yeah. Agreed.
cool. I didn't mean to derail you there.
You didn't. I
Okay,
was
good.
done.
Okay, great. Awesome. Well, I am very excited about learning some like actual tactical things like you were talking about. But
Sure.
before we dive into actual strategies music makers can use to confidently ask for I do something else you pointed out was how like we already use this part of our brain. And
Mm-hmm.
so you're saying that as a creative, like negotiation could be our superpower.
Yeah.
And I actually got that from I love that part of the book. I could tell that it was an older book. There's some like really old political references that I'm like, might not like be actually relatable to artists now, but there's some really great
What,
stuff
they
in
don't want to
there.
hear about Jimmy Carter?
I was
I'm
like, oh wait a minute. And
okay.
right, but like getting creative in the brainstorming process and negotiating, like that's kind of what I think we're hearing is like, oh, as a creative, you can actually bring this to the table in negotiation, and I think that could be a great perspective shift. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so maybe we should just go ahead and dive right in. A question that
Sure.
I had that I've heard other folks ask too is what strategies can music makers use to confidently ask for fair pay when they feel like they're negotiating from a position of weakness? And what do you think that weakness is? Do you think that is
Right.
perhaps scarcity?
So this is, well, I mean, yes and no, right? Because I think negotiating leverage is a thing. It's a real thing. And when I talk about leverage, what I mean is who has the power, right? So for those of you non-lawyer singer-songwriters out there, it's like that's what I mean. Like when you go into conversations where you feel like you are at a disadvantage, right? I would call that low leverage, or what you're saying is a position of weakness, right? You're like, oh gosh, one of us has more power, the other one has less power. And this is incredibly common in the singer songwriter world, right? Where most of us singer songwriters, myself included, trying to get the gig, trying to get the song placement, trying to get whatever it is, trying to agent, you have these people who are the gatekeepers of the things you want and the things you need. And I'm going to remind me if I don't come back to the difference, because there is a big difference between the things you want and the things you need. And most of us do not think long and hard enough about that difference when it comes to things we ask for and the way we ask for them. But most of us have this sense that that the rest of the world are the gatekeepers and we are knocking at the door, and we don't want to
Mm.
knock too hard, because if we knock too hard we're going to come across weird and people aren't going to like us, and we're not going to get what we want, or maybe there's like 10 other people knocking and they're better than me. And so maybe if someone just even opens the door a little bit and offers me a pittance, I should say yes, right? I should say yes to whatever it is they offer me and not explore further, right? Because that is certainly, in a lot of ways, that is the safe path,
Hmm.
right? The safest path is to just say yes and to not engage in any difficult conversation at all. You can do that. You're allowed, right? And if you're truly in a position where you feel like you have to have this, whatever this is, then don't feel like you have to push, right? I mean, if pushing makes you scared and you're scared enough that you think that what will happen is if you even push a little bit, if you even just ask a question, that they will just hang up the phone and walk away. Don't ask the question. Don't push, right? But what I will tell you is that 90% of the time, pushing a little, asking a question, they're not going to hang up the phone and walk away. And the reason, so what we when we talk about sort of how do you ask for things, or how do you negotiate from a position of weakness, the first thing that I would say is to remember that if you're at the table, if you're on the phone, if you're on the Zoom with that person that you want or need something from, you've got some leverage. The reason you have the leverage is because they're spending time with you.
Mm.
The most important and valuable thing that those people have to offer is their time. The longer that they spend talking to you, the more leverage you have, because the harder it becomes for them to just sort of hang up the phone and go find someone else. So I would encourage folks to maybe be curious
Mm.
about the leverage you really have, because if they took the time to look you up, to listen to your music, to get on the phone, to schedule a call out of their busy day, right? They they see something that they like, and that's good. That means that you have something that they want. Now, are you going to be able to be completely like, they call you up, they offer you, $100 for the gig, and you're like, I want 2,000. Well, I mean, that's a completely different conversation. The issue is, sort of, are you prepared? Right. And
Mm.
that would be the second thing I would say, right? For people with low leverage, one, remember that you have more leverage than you think, almost always, right? Two, you need to be prepared with facts.
Could you give an
What
example?
about, well, okay, so let's say that you're out, prepping for, you're trying to put together a tour, right? And you're trying to put together places to play, and you have no idea what people pay, what places play in Omaha, what places pay in Omaha, or how that differs from what places pay in Seattle or New York City or Miami. Like, you're going to get into a lot of trouble there. You're either going to undersell yourself, or you're going to be asking for things that are completely unrealistic. And the folks you're talking to are not going to be pleased about that,
Mm.
right? Do your research. Know what the market asks are for whatever it is. Know that before you come into the conversation. And then you can always be speaking from a position of strength, right? That's the last thing the third point that I would say about this is that people view negotiation, most people, as a game of hiding the ball,
Mm.
right? I'm going to withhold information. Nobody's going to tell me, right? Like the folks who own the venue are never going to tell me how much they can really afford to pay. They're not going to
Mm.
tell me information. And because of that, I need to hold on to my stuff too. I'm not going to tell them what my real number is that I need. Wrong, 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 wrong. Know what you want, know what you need. Those two things are different.
Yeah.
I want $2,000 for this gig. I need, in order to make this work for me and what I'm willing to do before I walk away, I need 1,500. Know that number. and know if that number is reasonable in market. If it's not, you're going to have to adjust, right? But assuming it's reasonable in market, there is absolutely no harm in actually being fully transparent and saying, hey, this is what I see as market. I see market as, and you don't have to start giving your lowest, but you can say like, I've looked around, I've played here before. I have friends who've played here before. My understanding is the range, and I would always try to give a range if you can because
Mm.
it gives you room to move. The range for songwriters in this area at these types of venues is between, uh, 1250 and 2250. Can you, and then, and so I'd like to be somewhere in there. And my thoughts are that I should be on this end of the spectrum because of this and this and this, right? I've got these albums out. I can get, I've proven that I can fill a venue, and so on and so forth. You give your reasons why you should be at the top end of the range. So all of these things, this preparedness concept is something that a lot of folks, especially a lot of creatives, don't spend enough time on. This is the type A stuff that is what makes the world move
Hmm.
and is what helps people take you seriously, not just as an artist, but as a business person.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to take that long. Like,
No.
a piece of advice I'm always giving artists when booking a gig, and it's so silly because when I think about when I very first started booking myself back when I graduated from Furman University in 2006, like, I mean, you don't know till you know, you just, how can you know? But it seems so obvious now. Like, I would reach out to venues and be like, do you have these dates available? When I could have just looked at their website and checked the calendar to see if they even have those dates available. And just that, like, the way that I feel that comes across, just making sure you know that the dates you're asking for example, are even available. I think that shows a level of um, yeah, preparedness that makes
Mm-hmm.
it more interesting for them to email you back and continue the conversation. So,
And if you don't mind, I want to talk about one more thing in terms of how to
yes,
negotiate from low leverage because
yes, please
and
do.
it's not it's one of those skills that I mentioned at the top, right? It's like to the this all stems from remembering that we are all we are all animals. We all are emotional. We make decisions based on emotion. This is the reason why advertising works.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
Um, right? Is because if we look at it logically, we would never buy whatever this thing was. But the advertising makes our animal mind want it. Why do I say this? I say this because your job as a negotiator, and this is especially true when you have low leverage, is to help the other person feel safe enough to tell you their why. Now,
Mm.
I'm going to take a step back here because most negotiations, humans are the only animals that haggle, right? Well, I'll give you $50 for that, Sarah.
Oh,
Oh, no, I couldn't accept less than 125. And you go back and forth and you settle at like 75. Is that a negotiation? No, not in my
mm-mm.
mind. That is
Okay,
haggling. You
okay.
are each of you is accepting that this is an anchor that I'm setting. This is an anchor that I'm setting. And hey, we're just going to meet in the middle. That is lazy. The reason it's lazy is because you have no idea what the other person's why is. I'll give you an example. So I have an orange. There are two people that want the orange. What is the most efficient negotiated solution? Go ahead.
Cut it in half.
Yeah, cut it in half, right?
It
Everybody gets the same amount. Is that right?
doesn't.
I
No,
were to
I
tell
feel
you some more information.
like.
What if I were to tell you that one person who wants the one person who wants the orange works at a bar, is a bartender there, and needs stuff to make drinks with, right? Needs the rinds, needs the skin, all that stuff to put into fancy drinks. The other person is trying to lose 20 pounds, is going on a juicing diet. What is the most efficient solution now?
Give juicer the juicy part and the skin to the bartender.
Right. That is a much more efficient negotiated
Oh, I like
solution.
that.
That is a true negotiation because you are learning about what each person needs. And now instead of each person only getting half of what they want, each person gets all of it.
So I'm thinking of a situation that I just had recently that I said no to because what I needed for the gig was not what they were interested in giving, but I do feel like I was haggling. Now, like, I almost feel like, have I only been haggling? Like, here's my rate. but here's what they wanted to pay. And it didn't make sense to travel that far to play that long for that amount of money. And so like and to like come away with actually making something, you know? So and I
Yep.
have this rate. So I was like, so for transparency, they wanted to give me $500 for 4 hours and bring a PA, and there was a couple other things they wanted me to do because it's like a special event. And I was like,
Yep.
well, usually my rate is 1,500 for this. And
Yep.
I was like, well, and maybe I tried to throw out some other options of maybe like, well, if you guys could put us up, then I could, the lodging and stuff like that. But they were just like, no, we want you to come play for five. It was very much like, I don't think they were interested in moving, but I was like, well, if I say yes to this, then I'm like, definitely just, I would feel like I'm being too submissive, but saying
Right.
no kind of sucks because now I don't have that gig. But I don't know. So in this situation, I don't know what would you
So
glean?
yeah. So let's take that example because it's a good one. So the first thing I would say is that some people, so in the negotiation world, there's a concept that's called it's the acronym, it's called BATNA, BATNA, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Basically, what it means is at what point is the deal just not worth doing? Right.
Right,
So if they were to say to you, hey, we want you to come and play this show for $1, you would say, thank you, but no.
right.
There's like no world in which that works. For me, it doesn't make any sense. Or if they couldn't offer you anything else that would make that dollar worthwhile, right? Because like they say, I want you to come and play this show for $1, and this incredible music agent's going to be there and watching you specifically. Does that maybe make it so that you would play it for $1? Maybe. Let's come back to that, right? Because that's part of what I'm talking um, about the why. But before I get there, I should acknowledge that there are some deals that are just not worth it. There are some times when it's okay to say no. If it's not what you need, right? If it's not what you want, it's worth thinking about, right? I wanted this. Could I do it for this? Yeah. Would my feelings be hurt? Maybe. Is it still worth doing? Okay, fine. I'm going to suck it up, right? That sort of thing. Uh, but if it truly is just not something you can do, don't do it, right? It's okay to say no, and it's okay to walk away. The thing that most people do is that they will take, and it sounds like you are already expanding beyond the haggle, which is great to hear, is
Okay.
that they will focus on one item, like a one issue negotiation. How much are you going to pay me? Right? That is not, and we talk about the why, and I'm going to differentiate now between a why and a what. What's are the things that we ask for. I want a raise. I want $500 for this gig. I want for my songs to be the first three songs on the set. Those are what's. They are not the underlying reason why you want them. The why is absolutely critical, not just for you to understand about yourself, but for you to understand about the person sitting across from you. When the
Mm,
person sitting across from you says, I only have $500, you have two choices. You can play on that field and assume assume that you have, that that's the what, that's it, that's all they have. Or you can do what good negotiators do, which is ask open-ended questions.
mm,
So
mm.
it
I'm like,
sounds
oh, I
like
could
you
have
only
handled
have
this differently.
well, let's play it out. It
Yeah.
sounds like you only have $500. Can you tell me a little bit more about, let me see, I even wrote some of the questions down. Can you tell me a little bit more about what a successful evening looks like for you?
Ooh, I like that. I like that.
Now,
Mm.
good questions are questions that are designed to get the other person to talk. Why do we want them to talk? We want them to talk because we're all animals, because as
We're all
animals
emotional.
and as we all want people to know us. And I'm going to pull this back again to being songwriters.
Oh,
Why do we do this job? We do this job because we are desperate for people to see us, not like physically,
Right.
but like to see us. We want people to know what's happening inside of us because we think it matters. We are not the only ones, songwriters, who feel this way.
Yeah.
Every single human feels it. It's just that songwriters have a gift that allows us to share it. Most people don't. Most people go through lives of quiet desperation, never being seen, never being heard. Your job as a negotiator is to make it safe for them.
Hmm.
It's not that people it's a common misconception that people hide their cards in negotiation, right? And don't want to share. The opposite is always true. That when you feel safe, you will share because you want someone to see you. You want someone
Hmm.
to know you. And so the thing that maybe you could do in that situation is you say, oh, okay, thank you. I hear that you've only got $500 to spend. Can you tell me, have, can you tell me about, can, I'm just trying to think of specific examples, but like you don't even have to attack the 500 right there. You could say, can you tell me a little bit more about how many people you expect to get at the event?
Yeah,
Can you
see,
tell
that's
me a
so
little
great.
more about the marketing that you might do for this show? Can you tell me a little more about what a successful evening looks like? Can you tell me about what you're scared of? Can you tell me what a bad evening looks like for you? Right. And all of these questions, or you could even, there's another thing we haven't talked about yet. You could label a fear. You could say, well, it sounds like you're worried that if you pay more than $500, you might be in the red. Is that right? And then
Yeah.
stop. Right. Like most of us, all like what I'm doing now, we talk too much. That's the other piece
This
of
is
it
great.
is that you once you've asked a good question, stop. Stop
Mm,
talking. Let them answer, because when they
mm,
answer, they are going to give you lots of information. And why do you care about having that information? Because the more information you have, the closer you are to understanding their why, right? The underlying reasons for the things they're doing.
yeah.
The more flexibility you have in how to solve that problem for them. And the more you can expand the scope of the negotiation, you can add new things that are opportunities that help to solve their problem while also give you a benefit. And one of those is like what you were saying, like, do you have a place for me to stay? Um, or how much marketing are you doing? Because I could really use the help on that. Do you know folks at the local radio station? Because maybe like $500, if I'm playing you, 500 is a little low. It's not, I normally ask for 1250, but let's keep talking. I'm curious, and the reason why the money matters to me is only because this is how I'm trying to make my living, and I'm also trying to sort of manage these different pieces, but I'm open to other alternatives. And so if it's $500 and then some other things that might help me to get more of a following in your town, I'm open to discussing that. Are there, can you tell me about some ways that you've dealt with this with other artists in the past? And that's another, I'm just sort of throwing out a bunch of things as I think of them. The other great technique for when you have low power and the leverage is asking for help.
Mm, hmm.
Ask the other person for help. Hey, so that I totally hear that 500 is what you have. That's a little low for me. Um, can you help me understand how you've done this with other artists in the past? How have they managed on 500? Or have you found some other creative way to help compensate them? And that opens up potentially a wide variety of options.
I want a do-over now. I mean, there will be plenty of opportunities in life. No, I love that because what I'm finding, like if I'm thinking about this situation now, this was for an event, like at this person's home, so it was like more of a private event
Mm,
situation, and um, if I remember how I'm feeling about how it went, I mean, it's the reason I'm bringing it up, right? Is that it felt like I was either being, yeah, I just felt like something was missing in my, like, oh, okay, well, I thought I threw out options of like, well, I could come and play maybe not for 4 hours, but I could come at this amount and then, plus lodging or whatever. But there was no just like, just, oh, I was so looking forward to having you at my house. I can't do anything else. And it was very like, there was no negotiation, but I do wonder, just kind of for the sake of my curiosity, because now I'm super curious. And this is exciting. I like that this is energizing me to think more creatively. Like, what open ended questions could I have asked to kind of get a feel for it? Because my little people pleaser, I'm like, oh no, I ruined the relationship with this person. I don't even know that I could have had it. It's like, and if I handled that with different questions or whatever, maybe there'd be another opportunity down the road, but I'm not sure with how it went. And I mean, like, this is just kind of how it goes. I wasn't, my number one rule is like, don't be an asshole. I just like actually said that on a panel this weekend at Opalika Songwriter Festival. I don't think I was being rude, but I do wonder with those open-ended questions, what kind of even relationship could further, because you're right. Like, I mean, we do get up on stage and bare our souls and we want everybody to listen to us. And I almost feel like this is another way we can connect with the people we're working
Well,
with to create a more strong community.
yeah, I mean, the thing that the most expensive thing, the most valuable thing we have to give in our lives is our time and our
Yeah.
attention. And most of us in conversation do not give people attention. We ask closed questions. Did you have a good day?
Yeah.
Right? I don't actually, when I ask you that question, I do not want a 10-minute description of what you did today. I want you to know that I care enough about you to ask that question, that I care. And I want you to give me a simple yes or no so I can go on to do what I want. Right? It's
Yeah.
the same with, hey, you notice when you go to buy a car, when you go to get a car, if you've ever done that, the person on the lot will not say, hey, this car is around $25,000. Can you afford that? That is a yes or no question. That is a closed question. They will never ask you that question. Why? Because it closes off conversation and it stops you talking. They want you talking. They want you to feel comfortable with them. So they will ask instead, what's it going to take to get you a new car today?
Yep. We just bought a new van. So yeah.
An open-ended question. And that's because the answer that you give will give them more information, but it also makes you feel important. They are going to sit and calmly listen to anything you have to say. One of the biggest gifts that you can give to all these people that we hold in such high esteem because we think they have so much power. Remember, these people are lonely. They are scared. They have their own stresses in life, and they are trying to make do. The best thing that you can give them in that moment is your attention and your willingness to hear them out, to ask them questions that will actually let them share the things that they are itching to share.
Mm.
The fact that that helps to give you more information with which to negotiate because it creates more options is just a nice side benefit.
Mhm.
Negotiators, look, people that are just genuinely nice people do this anyway. Negotiators do it on purpose.
Mm.
The fact that it makes you fun at parties is a side benefit.
Totally. Well, being a good listener is a really great practice. I mean, I feel like I'm always trying to do it. Like to be a
But
better listener.
it's asking the right questions and then waiting for the answers.
Hmm.
And if you're still not sure about the why, repeat the last three words the other person said. Try that just now.
Last three words person said.
Yeah. You have to repeat the last three words the other person said because if you repeat those last three words, we have a subconscious thing that goes off in our heads where we want to elucidate. We want to tell you more. And
Mm.
by telling you, by asking, so asking, by saying those last three words, or at least the three words that were the most important in the sentence I just said, it encourages me to keep talking.
Yeah, this is so interesting because yeah, it's something that I that maybe stuck with me the most in like the first half of the book Getting to Yes, which really spoke to me because there's been so many times I've had what I thought were negotiations or tough conversations where I definitely felt myself like, I mean, what you were saying. I mean, I've experienced all of them. Like, I'm sure I've been passive aggressive when I didn't realize, or like, I just get like, no, this is what I need. And I'm sticking to it. And like, I got to stand, or all these things, or I'll be a conflict avoidant, like super hard. But something that really resonated with me is I read a line that was like, remember, like, people don't hear you. Like, people might not literally hear what you said. Like,
Oh, so there's something that there's a study that was done at UCLA, which is absolutely fascinating. So let me ask you this. It's not in that book. So what percentage would you think of a message that people hear is the words that you say,
uh, gosh,
as
I
opposed to, I'm going
like
to
a
give you three
vibe or
things.
a feeling.
Yeah, no. The actual the sorry, I'm trying to think of how to ask this without giving it away. But like, okay, I'm just going to ask it, right? Like, if you like the how much do the words, the actual words that you say matter in any conversation? The actual word.
Gosh, probably less than I think. 10%.
7%.
Oh my god.
7% of the communication of a message is from the words you say,
Wow.
right? We all think that if we talk enough or fast enough or well enough, that we will be able to convince the other person that we are right.
Yeah.
The first rule of negotiation, I think, people only ever do what they want to do. You will never be able to convince anyone of anything. Please, God, stop trying.
That's so true.
The whole point, what good negotiators do, is they lead you, they help you using the skills that we're talking about today. They help you get to a place where you want the things that I want. And that's
Finding
how you
common
create
ground.
that's well, or helping to understand the why of it and then
Right, like the
finding
orange.
ways so that everybody gets right exactly.
Yeah.
And so if only 7% of a message is the actual words you say, what's the other 93?
Your intention, your energy, the emotion.
Some of it.
I don't know.
38% is your tone of voice.
Ooh.
Are you using, and we as songwriters have a great skill set here, right? There was a great class that Pat Pattison taught about how singing is, or how speaking is singing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that you can
Totally.
tell what a person, tone comes across
Totally.
in the way that you speak. There's a book by Chris Voss called Never Split the Difference, which I think is really good. And he talks about three different tones of voice. He talks about the FM DJ voice, which is calm, collected, always inflected downward at the end. It shows calmness. It helps to calm the waters of a conversation. It also conveys, I've got this covered. We're good, right? It moves people towards safety in a conversation. The second tone of voice is playful, like a playful voice. It's when you're genuinely smiling and you're
Mm-hmm.
having a real genuine conversation and everything is sort of light and you're like, yeah, of course we can figure this out. It turns out that is the best vocal tone to use in difficult conversations because it makes it more likely that people will think more broadly about creative options. And then there's the third, which is the direct and assertive voice. It is snippy, it is clipped, it is short, it is nasal. It is always an attempt to establish dominance and to convince, right? It
Yeah.
usually comes from a place of hurt, place of fear, and it is death for negotiations because
Yeah.
people will hear that and they will shut down. And remember, it doesn't matter the words you say, right? If you're saying really lovely words, but they're coming across in a clipped tone, people are not going to hear it the way you intend it. So 7% are words, 38% is vocal tone. The other 55% is your facial expression.
Wow, that's so interesting. I had a a business relationship that didn't go so great, and it takes two to tango, as they say. And I found myself just really questioning my communication, and I tried all these different things. like I tried saying the words, like the actual words. And this is where the book like really this got me excited about, because I was like, all right, I said what I meant and what, like, Like, what's gonna happen? And I said it in a really cheery tone, and I almost wondered, like, was I too cheery? And so the words got lost. And then, like, because like the vocal communication wasn't going well, I started just emailing it, so there was no question about what I said. And
Ooh,
that
yeah.
actually didn't help me at all. Like,
That's not going to do better. That's not
and
going to
it
do better.
didn't,
And that's
because I
worth
actually
saying
ended
to,
up getting more emotional responses that I thought. I was like, well, if I just lay out the facts, like then like this will be easy, right? But I mean, I definitely was in, like, I'm not saying, like, I definitely wanted to feel like I was right. And I'm not saying I was, or I was doing the best I could in the moment. That I am sure of.
yeah,
But
I mean,
but yeah, I didn't have the right words, and anytime I tried, I am like, in hindsight, I'm like, wow, there was a lot of really emotional response, and a lot of it could have just been I was trying to, like, be a, like, maybe
well, and
assertive.
it's important in those moments. And I know we're sort of going all over the place, but the in those moments, if you're hearing that sort of anguish or anger or things from someone sitting at the across from you, and you need something from them, it's one of the greatest tricks is to label that fear, to label
Yeah.
what you
Oh
see,
yeah. Totally.
right? And to
Yes.
to say, wow, it sounds like it sounds like what I said really upset you. Stop talking, right? Like it sounds like what I said really upset you. And give them a chance to say, to tell you whether you are right, right? That's the other piece, is that most people are looking to hear yes. We think that hearing yes means that we've won. That is
Mm,
not true.
right.
People say yes for a million different reasons, including, yeah, 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 I need to get off the phone now.
Yep.
Or or yes, but I need to get someone else's approval for this, so I don't really have control of this decision. Or yes to this thing, but not to all the other things you asked for. There are lots of ways that people say yes, and not all of them will give you the thing that you want. The words you
Totally.
want to hear are, that's right. Wow, it seems like you're really upset about this. Is there a different way that it sounds like you're really upset about this. That's right, I am. Well, can you tell me more about that? Because my goal was not to upset you. I'm trying to find a solution that works for both of us. And I think that there is one here. And I'm sorry if this is coming across as difficult, but can you tell me more about X, or whatever the thing is that you want to hear about? Your job from a place of low power is to always try to get the other person to feel comfortable, to feel safe, to feel like they can share the things that are important to them. Because the more that you can do that, the more optionality is presented, and the more likely they are to be creative in their thinking with you.
This could be
Um,
just great for bands. Like, I mean, I do. I've been a solo artist most of my career. I've been in bands, and I've had a band, and I'll tour with bands sometimes. Haven't in a long time. Um, but yeah, there's so many little things that could come up, and having these skills to be able to negotiate those micro moments of, like, instead of everybody shutting down, like, all right, let's talk about what we need. What's the why here? There's just,
yeah.
like, countless ways that we can be conscious of our tactics here in the music world to help us
Mm-hmm,
through.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
Totally. Let's see. I think we actually even answered our um we kind of, like, went right into my other major question. But maybe we could just kind of review, like, what steps can musicians take to prepare a solid negotiation plan that allows for
Sure.
flexibility. Is there like a, I love to have, like, my spreadsheet or my little checklist to help me stay focused. Because sometimes I'll sit down to, like, do a bunch of things, and I'll have analysis paralysis, and I'm just like, oh my God, what do I do? Where do I start? So is there like a few things we can always kind of keep handy to review if we're like, oh, start with asking for what I need? What would you
Yeah.
recommend?
And I took notes on this too, because it was such a good question. So the the first thing, we talked about this before, be prepared. Do your research. Use real facts. And then don't be afraid to share those facts, right? Like, hey, so my sense is that the going rate for X is this range based on what I understand from where I've played around here in the past, or where my friends and stuff played in the past. And this is where I think I should fall within the range, because I have this much experience. I've done this before. I've done this before. Blah, right? Know your facts. Don't be afraid to share them. This is called anchoring, right? It's a way of sort of
Mm-hmm.
establishing where you think the discussion ought to be. right? And sometimes it works because remember, humans are lazy and we are all sort of geared towards haggling and towards focusing on the bright, shiny thing. And you've given your, by saying, look, here's my actual research. Happy to share it with you if you want to see it. And here's where I think we fall within it. Can you tell me how that, and then finish with an open-ended question. Can you tell me how that all sounds to you? Right. And then shut up. Give them a chance to talk. Right. Remember rule number one in my book, you will never convince anyone of anything. The
Mm,
goal of that exercise is not to convince them that you are right and that they should cave. They will not. The goal of that conversation is to set the table, is to establish what field you're playing on, and then to solicit more information, right? To see if there is a deal to be done, right?
absolutely.
So that's how I'd start. The second is I'd spend way more time listening than talking. So do the opposite of what I'm doing on this call. Um, ask good open-ended questions that will with the goal of unearthing other value opportunities, right? Most people are afraid of complexity,
Hmm.
right? Because most people are lazy, myself included. Our brains are wired this way. We want a quick solve, and so when you focus on the quick solve, you will get into a haggle really quickly. If it's only about money and there are no other things that are of value to either side, then it's going to be a haggle. But that's hardly ever true.
I like
Usually,
that. Other than money. Like, because I
right.
do think, I do think that yeah, I just think that's an interesting point.
What are the other things? Make a list. What are the other things that would be of value to you that this person might be able to give you, right? And it could range from good marketing and publicity at the venue. Maybe you've never gotten that before, and maybe they've got friends in high places and can put $500 towards a marketing campaign. Can they intro you to the local radio station and get you on that morning? Cool. Can they do, like, I'm just thinking out loud, right? There's a bunch of stuff you all could probably think of creatively. Could they, if you fill 70% or more of the theater, let's say you take a lower amount of money, but if you fill over 70%, you get an extra 20% bump,
Yes, and that's totally a thing. Or lodging.
right? Or
I've
lodging.
seen people get paid in flyer miles. Or,
Yeah.
if it's a private event, maybe they'll be willing to fly you out.
Yep.
And
Or
there's
you could
also, yeah.
be, maybe you're not even the headliner for this show, but if this show goes well and you bring in enough people for your set that they guarantee you a headliner next year, these are all options and they're all available to you to explore, right? And you have no idea what they're willing to offer or what they think is valuable. Because one thing you can be sure of is they've had this same conversation with hundreds of artists before you. So asking them for help is incredibly valuable because remember, people are generally good and want to help, right? If you're not afraid, then they will genuinely want to help most often. And so helping them to not be scared, right? Using the tricks we've talked about, and then asking them, like, hey, I'm sure that you've had the same conversation with 100 others. I can't imagine it's been easy for you. Can you help me? Because right now I'm kind of stuck on the money. And I'm guessing that there are other ways, more creative ways that you've solved this problem with artists before. Can you help me? Maybe give me some examples of what you've done with them.
What a trust building thing. Like,
Right.
I think that also just shows initiative in a way that, like, in this musician world, like, when I was working on Music Row in Nashville, when I had a publishing deal, I can't believe how often I was complimented on my ability to be on time. And that's
Hmm.
not something I'm like, but being on time is like, that's just what you do. Like, I don't expect to be complimented on. I just expect that, like, time is like our most
Right.
valuable resource. Like, let's show up when we agree we're gonna do it. And so to my point, I think, like, 5-10 minutes of preparation goes so far. Or being able to open up those ways of communication with venues is building a trust that's gonna just serve. So, like, this whole, I mean, life is, we're humans, is this all about relationship building. And if you have any desire to come back to that venue or work with those people again, or let that, spider web continue to be woven, webbed, weaved, whatnot, then I think all of this is just so, I mean, you're just opening up, you're showing a venue perhaps that you're not a typical artist, because they also have their expectations about how artists who represent themselves like act and behave. And it's just very easy to set yourself apart with a few mindful skills in this way, I think, or at least in my experience,
Hmm.
I've seen it. So,
Yeah, I agree. I agree. The only other things I would say, I mean, I could say tons, but like what steps can you take to prepare a solid negotiating plan? Um, don't lie, like ever. Uh, you will almost always get caught. If not now, you'll get caught later, and it will destroy your reputation.
yeah.
Don't lie. Don't say no if you don't mean it. You want your signaling to be clear and trustworthy, right? And so if you say no, but then you ultimately agree to it, it means that the next time you say no, people will not believe you, right? There are lots of ways to say this is hard for me. This makes me uncomfortable. I'm not sure that that's going to work for me. Let's talk about that more. Those are all ways of clearly signaling there's an issue, but you're not saying no, right? Save the no's. Save the no's for when you are actually, and this is the last bit, know your walkaways, know your needs versus your wants,
Mm-hmm.
right? Know what those things are, and then don't be afraid as the negotiation proceeds to let folks know what those things are, right? Like, I'm sorry, I can't go below 650. I hear that it's only five. If this is true, I hear that you only have $500 to spend, and I want to find other ways to help make sure that you get all the money that you need from this so that you're not in the red. And I'm sure that we can find a way to do that. And I would love to talk about ways that we can make sure that you get the extra money. But unfortunately, I'm just not able to do it for less than 650. Right? That is a clear statement. And they might say, okay, thanks. I'm sorry, we can't do it. But then that's okay. Because if you really couldn't do it for less than 650, you're in a better position because now you can find someone who will do it for 650.
Right.
These folks wouldn't.
Totally. Oh, I love that. I mean, I think that's a huge thing. I think folks are afraid to say no. I think musicians are, they're like, oh, but I have to. That's kind of a scarcity move, I think, because if you really are clear on your want versus need, and the other one was want, why versus what.
What?
And I think
Yeah.
I'm always asking artists when I work with them, they'll be like, "Oh, well, I need a manager," or "I need this." I'm like, "Okay, what do you think a manager is going to do? What is it that you actually want? Like, cool, like we
Right.
all want help, we all want a team, we all want the dream, but what does that actually mean, and why do you actually want that?" Um, like getting very clear on what success means to artists, and yeah, what are all the options? I think all of this is just such great food for thought. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it goes across the board, like in anything I'm talking that I think you've got some great tips, like be prepared. Like when is that not a good tip? And I think you've definitely given us tons of ways to be prepared and to think. And even, for anybody who's rewatching this, go back, take notes. I'll have to do a transcript of this because, you have so many great open-ended questions that you asked. I think like getting, even if artists who are listening to this can sit and brainstorm, what are some open-ended questions, what are some things, what is my why, just brainstorm on it, and it'll evolve over time, especially if you've never thought about it before. Giving yourself just the time to think about it, let it
Mm-hmm.
unfold. So being
Yeah.
prepared, listen more, talk less, don't lie, and save your nose. Save your nose. I think that's really awesome because no is powerful and it's potent, and we should also be able to say no. And
Sure.
when we do say no, if it doesn't work out, I've seen it time and time again when I've been brave enough to say no because it just isn't going to work. The universe really does reward me with a better yes. And I might not be able to see it at the moment, but it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
one of those magical things.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, how can folks keep up with you, Steve? Thank you so much for being here, for doing this, for sharing your knowledge. I'm super inspired. I can't wait to share this with so many people, and I hope we get to do this at song school one day. Um,
I hope so.
it'd be so, so, so great because this is just so valuable. And I mean, I went to school, I have a classical cello degree in communication studies, and I kind of wish I had gotten a business degree in some ways, but I'm continuing to learn, and I think that's really important as long as we're all as independent artists continuing to be curious and learn the things that we weren't taught in school to do this job well. So thank you for supporting music makers, and yes, thank you for sharing your time.
Most welcome. And if folks want to get in touch with me, they should feel free to just ping you, and you can pass along my information. I am on LinkedIn, which a lot of artists don't necessarily use, but it's my sort of my business world. You can find me there as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Steve, so much. And yeah, we'll see you around.
That's great. Thanks.